Welcome to episode 6 of Dark Matters. I'm Carly Spell, and here with me today, I'm honoured to have Logan from Decode Your Reality. Logan is a master decoder and alchemologist, which, for those of us who are new to this, alchemology is utilising numerology of the spoken word and matching those numbers to the elements found on the periodic table as outcomes. Logan also utilizes cartomancy, tarot, and astrology, amongst other things. But in the main, he utilizes his shit hot wit, superseismic synapses, and his distinct plutonium powered gut instincts to decode your reality. Not for you, but with you, transforming you from a non player character into a grand master of this ripping ride of this simulation we call the game of life. So numbers, alchemy, sacred geometry, they aren't narratives, but they do tell their own story, the only story. So Logan's huge body of work will not only connect those missing dots, hopefully for you, but stands as a testament to the nature of those who seek shall indeed find. So Logan, thank you for taking the time out for being with us here today. I'm very excited to have you with you. Spend the next hour decoding a few things and giving the viewers hopefully a piece of the puzzle that they don't already have.
Yeah. Well, that was a long, beautiful intro. Thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time out to write all that stuff. I just wanted to say, I don't, like you had said, master decoder, and I'm just a decoder. I don't like using these adjectives only because, do we ever master anything? There's always such big room for improvement. I think maybe a refined decoder would make more sense versus the master, but I totally get it. It's totally fine with your choice of words. I just wanted to kind of put that out there for people to kind of
Yeah.
take into consideration. I think that just the subject that we focus on is really all that's important. These silly adjectives that we use, especially in the world of good versus evil, these adjectives I feel are just really silly when you really understand the machinations of the true essence of what it means to play in this reality.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point, isn't it? Like you say, if we kind of say that we've mastered anything, I think you kind of stay static. I think certainly on my journey, if I'd have just stuck at one thing, I'd probably still be a Buddhist somewhere, And I think it's this mutability in our ability to be constantly learning, and that's what helps us grow and see, doesn't it? So yeah, no, it's a good point. So before we get into the hardcore nitty-gritty of alchemy and numbers, what is your story? Because I recently came across your channel, because my background is banking and law. I'm a lawyer, but I've been awake 20 odd years. But when I started to see the code in legalese, when I started to decode all those systems, etymology led me to astrotheology, led me to kind of syncretism of say like Santos Bonacci and many others, which then of course has led me to yourself. So what kind of set you on your path, and what were the catalysts that kind of got you here?
Huh. Well, I I was really knee deep. I was an agent, I was a Mr. Smith in the Matrix. I was that guy that I didn't even know I was defending it. I was just actually operating within the confines of this reality, which it's a fun confine to play, fun reality to play in, right? But it wasn't until 2011 I actually went to federal prison, and that literally changed my whole entire demeanor in life and all that kind of stuff. And I've been public about this so many times. And that's really the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. Because of that shift in my life, I had to spend 18 months away from everything. I had to rely on things that I normally wouldn't do, and that was reading a lot of books. So during the 18 months that I was incarcerated, I read over 100 books. Many of these books I read multiple times, and a lot of them were on personal development, but many of them were on the mystical arts, astrology, numerology, how the whole how all reality works. A big book that comes to mind is Stalking the Wild Pendulum by Bentoff. That book really kind of changed a lot of the way I perceive reality. And so because of that 18 months of being incarcerated, it changed my whole life. And that was kind of led me, when I got out, I went back into the world, trying to make heads or tails of it, with obviously a glitch in my whole demeanor. But I continued on that path, and it eventually led me into where I'm at now, Decode Your Reality. So it was the greatest thing that ever happened to me. So that's kind of where I got started and where I'm at now.
Yeah, wow. And I think that's kind of what has happened to a lot of people in the last 4 years, including myself. We were kind of all incarcerated in a way, weren't we?
Yep.
Stay in your home, stay safe.
Yeah. 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 Totally. That's what that was the joke I would tell my audience. Like
And
everybody
I
knows what
think
it
people
feels
to
like to be
spend
in
time away
prison.
from the Matrix. Yeah,
Huh?
yeah, exactly. And then
Yeah.
people either like kind of quickly saw it or didn't, and are still kind of, you know, in that matrix, in that kind of dream or that sleep or whatever we want to kind of call it. But I think you put it very succinctly, and there's a lot of different stories and different narratives, isn't there? If you walk into a bookshop, there's the books on spirituality are like endless, and everyone can have their own opinions, and everyone can have like have their own dogma or their own belief systems, but I think what I love about numerology and alchemology, which is kind of new to me, and if your views have been going up recently, Logan, on your channel, it's likely to be, me stalking you on this side because I've spent the last 2, 3 days, particularly leading up to this. I don't think I've ever took so many notes, just going, whoa,
Oh,
it's literally been blowing my wig off.
that's
But as,
cool.
as hard as it is perhaps to grasp at first, it's kind of quite simple, isn't it? There's a simplicity to it, really. Like you
Yeah.
say, the trusty calculator, and it does strip away these bullshit narratives, or as you would say, the Bible or the Bible bullshit scripts of whatever this place is, I think.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Everything's all letters, numbers, and symbols. That's pretty obvious. Even somebody that doesn't want to admit that, I mean, you can take anything in this reality, break it down into letters, numbers, or symbols. I mean, especially mathematics, because, like you can measure anything with mathematics. So ideally that you can have whatever your beliefs are in this reality, but on the other side of that, you can break it down with numbers and show you what that means through the mathematical expressions. And there are many different ways to do that: sine and cosine waves, which is trigonometry, algebra formulas, and then just the basic fundamentals of the numbers themselves. The fingerprints, these numbers, they have personalities. So as a numerologist, when you know the base fundamentals of the numbers 0 through 9, you have the personalities, the descriptions of them. Then you can correlate that right into astrology and figure out the houses of astrology, which make up our personalities. And then you just kind of cross that off the list, and you get into the tarot and the cards of illumination, a typical deck of playing cards. Why there's 52 cards in the deck? Because there's 52 weeks in a season. All these things, they're just beautifully synchronized, and they're so harmonious. And when you start to look at our reality through these lenses of mathematics and letters, numbers, and symbols, you're going to start to see patterns emerge I'm getting into cymatics, which is like
Yeah.
pouring sand on a board and playing sound through it and seeing the shapes. Mind blowing stuff that I've been finding just in the few past
Yeah.
weeks. So it's been an amazing journey.
Yeah, yeah. Cymatics is because we know that everything is frequency, don't we? That it has this, frequency and vibration. And it goes back to the numbers, doesn't it, with Tesla? So it's like 369, which obviously 369 and 12. And one of my they don't kind of mention the 12. And it goes back to the kind of the Bible or the script, which is why it's, scripture, it's your script. And I think this kind of hijacking of our frequency, of our consciousness with these third party narratives. So we almost kind of perhaps act them out. I don't know, but I think the numbers kind of tell the story for us, don't they? They have maths is that universal language. So certainly with cymatics, the lower frequencies, don't they? It actually creates a hex, doesn't it? I can't remember what the frequency is, and the hex is obviously found on Saturn, and Saturn is obviously related to the cube and the tetragrammaton, which is tetra is four, and then you've got the four pillars of the earth, and obviously in the legal system, Saturn worship is a big thing. The judge wears the Saturnian robes. It's all this kind of nod to Father Time, or Saturn, Satan, Set, or Kronos, really. So again, like the decodes of the box that you do, it just kind of blows my mind. And I think when we get into that Taurus field, can you tell us a little bit more about that on your decode? I mean, I was watching it the other day, and how we are, the cube is at the center, isn't it? And then we've got the Taurus fields and the infinity symbols, which kind of create a four-leaf clover almost, and we're kind of in the middle of that, kind of living in that tetra in that cube, or we're trapped in that cube, I guess, is one of the theories we're trapped here.
Yeah, there's a lot of merit to that story of maybe never getting out of this reality. There's been many artists that have, which I've decoded, that say that, you know,
Yeah.
you're in here for good. You're just going to get reset, remastered, replayed, redo, repeat, reincarnation. These words that start with re, you know, which are
Yeah.
tied to Ra. So there's a lot of layers to that have a lot of merit of being inside this box of time. But just a few weeks ago, I was playing with the cymatics, and that really one of the most harmonious frequencies, solfeggio, the hertz is 528. You get 432, and then you get 528. And I was looking at someone's video that was showing what the sand looks like at 528. And from like 522, 523, 524, 541, you know what it makes the shape of? A grid. It makes the shape of a chessboard. So 528 and 541 is the 100th prime number. And then you can get into mainstream and Cass Morgan and her book series called The 100. So 541 being the 100th prime number shows through cymatics that shape forms a grid. And now you have your duality. Now you have your box, your cube, your square. 528 shows the same thing. I know Saturn has a lot to do with this aspect, but let's not leave out the almighty Zeus, because Zeus is the one who is the king of the gods, the largest planet in the canopy, is the only one that has the all-seeing eye on it. And a lot of my research now leads to Jupiter being the ruler of this reality and maybe just be the god of the Bible and the Tetragrammaton.
Yeah, I saw that in one of your videos actually, because obviously we've got Jupiter, which
Yep.
actually goes to Jupiter in scripture, isn't it? And
Yep.
scripture isn't meant to be read literally. It literally is a code. And they say that it's for the adept. We know that it's astrotheological and anatomical. So astrotheological in the sense that obviously you get the 12 disciples, which represents the 12, the zodiac, the wheel of the zodiac.
Yep.
We get the 12 cranium, nerves in our head. We've got 12 systems of the body, and the 12 is this constant number, isn't it, all the time? And if you read it literally, it's like in old say thousands of years later after the Bible, and it says something in the Bible like, oh, there wasn't enough room to swing a cat. So I said there's not enough room to swing a cat in here, and somebody writes it down. Well, somebody might read it thousands of years later and think I was doing some kind of strange ritual in the Bible, because they're reading it like, they're reading it literally. And it's not meant to be. Like there is no historical physical land that's Israel. It's the inner functions of the human body. It's chemical and alchemical, isn't it?
Yeah.
And again, alchemy, I think, is a master number, isn't it? It's 22. And change, and this idea of alchemy, of lead to gold, that we're supposed to be kind of transmuting these kind of, I suppose, like heavier lead frequencies, and this is where we get 42 from. And the cube itself that Jesus Christ was crucified on represents matter, doesn't it? Or the cube, or the Sacred Heart is two symbols of Saturn, which is carbonate, which is 42, which is the answer to the meaning of the universe, the life, and everything, isn't it? So 42 and matter and carbon. I always say that, when they say that they want to reduce carbon with the kind of, the fake kind of climate change agenda, it's like, you are the carbon that they want to reduce, unfortunately. That's what they're kind of going for.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. The
it's
42 is
yeah,
you know, uh, that's the incarnation process. I showed through the water cycle, the 42 and my 42 decoded. But 42,
yeah,
that's the symbol of Jupiter. If you pull up the symbol of
yeah,
Jupiter, the 4-2 and the 1, the 241 are right inside that symbol. And 241 is the 53rd prime number. You correlate that to alchemy. That's the element iodine, which has the letter I on it. And Jupiter has the all-seeing eye on it. So, there's
yeah,
a lot of, again, it's my research is all going to Zeus right now. I used to be
yeah,
big on Kronos, but, Zeus has got the big nod right at this point, and it's tied to the Phoenix because, Zeus's mascot is the eagle, the Phoenix, so when the Phoenix rises, what gets all that energy? When you have that big bang explosion, perhaps all these deaths that may happen in the future on some kind of cataclysm. Well, the energy rises and it goes up, and what gets that energy, through the transmission of that. So a lot of my research
Yeah.
points to Zeus at this point.
Yeah, and I think you said again, like in alchemology, the main six elements that we're kind of made up of, or most things are made up of, are carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, and sulfur. And when we add those up, that equals the 105, which is the great architect of the universe, isn't it? And again, all the decodes and all the numbers, again, the numbers don't lie, do they? And they pull this kind of proverbial thread. They tell the narrative for us, if we, for those that have eyes to see, if we can kind of, see the code. Really, I think once you can kind of see that code, then you can kind of begin to float above that duality reality, or that cosmic chessboard. And like you say in cymatics, it literally creates the chessboard itself, doesn't it? Like on that frequency.
Yeah.
And we are electromagnetic beings, so we are frequency. So frequency kind of is the weapon, or the I think is it the 19, the one is the cathode or the anode, and the nine is
Can
the
be, yeah.
cathode.
You can use the one
Our
and nine.
batteries, aren't we?
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
for
yeah,
sure.
the one and the nine.
1000%. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
I think we're made up of like 19% car, 18 and a half, 19% carbon. So, I mean, yeah,
yeah.
19 can be used as the anode and cathode for sure. Battery equals 19 in numerology. The sun is tied to the
That
battery,
was it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, the battery, and obviously, it goes back to like the Gnostic ideas that these archons came, or Yaldabaoth, or the demiurge, came, well, was created by Sophia. I think we interviewed Joey Phipps from the Library of the Untold, and he calls it a great syntax error, like an error in the program, or the programming, and that created the demiurge, or Yaldabaoth, and he created the archons in chaos, and that kind of had to be kind of leveled up. So there's a and that basically they've been mining us. We are the gold that they came to mine. And I think gold 17, I think, which is
79.
the same. Yeah, yeah. And we are the gold that they've come to mine, and that we are the batteries, and that they are looshing, our energy, and that this is where this idea is, that we are kind of trapped here, and that there's a huge difference between the great architect of the universe as to this demiurge, or this kind of chief archon, isn't there? And the numbers kind of tell that tale as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's no way to prove that we're stuck here, but there's no way not to prove it. I'm
Yeah,
not really big into proving. I like to use the word support, because there's a lot of theories, there's a lot of opinions, but there's very little support. People's opinions, there's a lot of what I call professional regurgitation. They just take a story, they spin it, they twist it. Maybe they just put a few words in there of their own, and next thing you know, they have something they call their own. So there's a lot of
yeah, yeah,
opinions rolling out there, very little support on these opinions and theories, et cetera, et cetera. But there is a lot to say about this energy being harvested. And I've been talking about this for a very long time. There's a very good possibility that this is a reality show. Earth is a reality show. I've been saying it's a movie. The Truman Show kind of was trying to say that. And
yeah,
we're inside of a big movie, and if you can wrap your mind around that maybe this is a vacation spot for spirit, and maybe
yeah,
every single star in the canopy, one of those stars is tied to you, and it's playing you, it's using you. Or it could just be God, the God, just playing everybody. I mean, in a lot of these ancient texts, especially in the Vedas, Hinduism, it's we're all
yeah,
incarnations of the God, of God, right? And you can't. I don't
yeah,
think personally, I don't think you can name whatever created this reality. I think once you name it and put it in a box, it becomes part of this construct. And I'm a fan of, and I am a practitioner of nihilism. And nihilism, the word kind of sounds kind of spooky, right? What does nihilism mean? It just means not adopting anything as your beliefs, so to speak. I mean, we all have that, because I have my
yeah,
theories in my Decode Your Reality channel, but at the same time, like, I'm not somebody who sides with religion, because religion means to redo the legion again. So,
yeah,
like, if you don't want to be part of this reality, if there is a way to get out of this reality, it's a very tall order to do, because this reality relies heavily on players. If you don't have bodies, you don't have spirits that can incarnate the bodies, you got no game going on. And the main construct through all these ancient texts and is about humping. It's about procreating. That's how we all got here, is by two people copulating and creating you as an offspring. And now you're another player on the board that spirit can enter into. I mean, theology talks about this. If you're a fan of the Old Testament, it says right in Genesis 6, verses 3, God saying, my spirit shall not reside in man forever, for they shall only be 120 years old. There's that 120. You remove the 0. There's that 12 zodiac signs. The Stargate, the zodiac wheel is your eyeball. That's all it is. The iris of your eye. Iris is iridium. That's 77. Hotel California. This is all tied to the temple of the body and spirit using you to play out its own reality. And I think that, there's contracts in place with spirit and matter. I feel Earth and the sun, they have a contract. You have Pluto and plutonium and think about this, Haley. It's like Callie, you have all this metal. You have all this metal that is inside the earth. How did it get there? And now mankind has this idea of let's dig it up. And when it digs it up, let's use it for something. And we use it. We've transformed it into phones, computers, circuit boards that makes, computer parts and, machinery. And we're taking, like, it purposely was put there in the ground. And when people don't use this critical thinking, what put that metal in the ground and why was it put there? And why is mankind digging it up? To recreate and reformat it and restructure it into things such as machinery, computers, etc. Why are we doing that? Why are we doing that at this stage of the game? We didn't, early 1900s, 1800s, 1700s, they weren't digging up metals and making circuit boards for computers. Now we're doing that. So now you can clearly see that we've gone from the age of Pisces, which is the end of man, so to speak, because Pisces is the hangman. That's the 12th sign. And now you're moving into what seemingly looks like the age of Aquarius, and that's the age of air. And we're now digging up these metals to make it into machine. And are we just transitioning into a different reality now, and the game changes into Aquarius? That's kind of what it looks like to me. What are your thoughts on that?
I suppose I've always thought, like, and this is why I perhaps came across, you at this time, and it is a journey, isn't it? And I think the way you describe nihilism, I suppose I've never kind of heard it termed in that sense. It, like I say, it sounds a lot scarier than it is, doesn't it?
Yep.
But I've never stayed static. I've never stayed still. I've never had a strict belief system, like you say, religion. It means, we are legion, we are many. It's from religiere, to hold back, to thwart, to bind, and that is, a construct. And we know that, that kind of Saturnian worship, and it's so interesting, like you're saying about Jupiter, and that's the first time I've come across that in your work. I think they try and move us from box into another box into another box, so we're constantly kind of being moved from one box, and when we think we get it, I just see more boxes. I just see more and more constructs. So it's always been something for me that I just dig and dig and dig. So
Right.
I kind of got to the point where I think we are in a scripted reality, like in a computer game, but we paradoxically have these free will choices, like and that's kind of that is, like we were saying earlier, a little bit more organic. So you kind of have this ability to make choices within the script, so to speak, and that we are these divine sparks. Again, whether we've been trapped here or not, I don't know. But one thing that I do know, or I do see, and that's from my direct experience as well. So again, it's not like a third party narrative that I've kind of sucked up, but that I think this simulation, or whether it is a holographic simulation, or whatever you want to call it, I think it is telling us all the time what it is, whether it's this black AI cube. And I think, I watched your decode on the Christ battery, and that just kind of blew my head, really. And again, this idea that, obviously we are the carbon, and obviously the Christ on the cross represents matter, and that we are the answer to the meaning of life, the universe, and everything. In scripture, it says, the number of the beast is the number of man. We all seem to think that, I think you call it the perversion of the negative, that somehow that is something outside of ourselves that we're seeing with this Satanism or Satan set, all these Satanists doing all these evil things. But these are just kind of this kind of negative aspect to things that we don't kind of want to look at. And that actually, if we kind of pull proverbial threads, and certainly the numbers are just, it's absolutely blowing my mind. So you've got to get over to Logan's channel, because it's kind of endless, but in a way, once you start to see that thread of the numbers, you just like, yeah, I've kind of, but I'll never stop there. I suppose I'll always keep moving. Even with that, I don't think I'll ever kind of stop seeking and searching, and that's part of that growth of that game. And I think the more you do that, I think you're less of a non-player character, and you are starting to, as I say, float above that chessboard, and you're starting to kind of, yeah, and it's showing you all the time. It's just a code, that you can learn how to read to your advantage, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah. Everything is code. The revelation I had in my life is realizing that, everything in our reality can be broken down into numbers, letters, and symbols. And how do we
Yeah.
write computer code? Like right now, wherever you're at in the world, listening to this transmission between us two, there's a code that's operating to deliver the final product, which is my voice right now, my image on that screen. Behind that you don't see is a code that somebody wrote, right? So a coder wrote the software. That's why your phone constantly is urging you to update, update, update. I mean, you can't use like the Apple iPhone, the very first one. You can't really use that anymore with the applications. You can use it as a phone. If you slap a SIM card in there, yes, it will take phone calls, but you can't use a lot of the applications Apple offers because the operating system won't allow it to mesh with this code that it writes. So it forces you to move and keep up with the Joneses, so to speak. So that's what it looks like. I mean, I've been saying this, like you look at a nice, beautiful green lawn. That's the final product. Behind the green lawn is a code that you don't see that's embedded into our reality. And that's why letters, numbers, and symbols rule our reality, not the final product. So the final product, you could call it an illusion. Okay. I'm not really into this fancy, like, oh, time is an illusion. Like I don't like the next time you look at your clock and you see it move a digit there, instantly and automatically, we now have the product of time. Right. That's the definition of time. So I'm not into these like, oh, time. And, yeah, are we living in an illusion? Like, well, it's pretty real to me. Right. And it fools you really good, so to speak. The point is like, you realize there's a code playing out, and then you want to figure out what your player character, what your code looks like. And that's what decodes your reality in the channel. And, like I take no credit for it. Like I say, whatever's in your head, the voice in your head that runs you. That's my final answer for every single human being walking around on this planet. Your mind runs you. You don't run your mind. It runs you. You can try to shut it off, but you'll notice you can't do that because you try to force yourself not to think, and that's thinking. So you can't shut your mind off. You're not designed to shut your mind off. And not every character that incarnates is going to play out the antagonist or the protagonist. There's going to be superheroes and villains in this reality, predator, prey, and that's the final answer that I have on this reality. And it's all coded and scripted, and we live in a predestined reality, and you don't have the choices you think you have as a human being. Now, some of you are going to get irritated. You're going to think I'm an asshole for saying that. You may not like me. Then you're going to start picking me apart. Oh, look at his hair, and what is his shirt? And because I don't fall into the confines of what your box allows you to. Anything outside of what you think is right, and you're going to deem wrong. You're going to look at somebody and say, well, I think Logan's wrong. Great. I'm not trying to be right in your world. I'm trying to be right in mine, just like you're trying to be right in yours. The way to eliminate and collapse division is everybody realizing that we're all right. You're creating your own reality as we go along. That's it. That's the final answer here. Everybody's right in this world.
Yeah.
Trying to prove everybody wrong.
No. I think a lot of trouble would be kind of like stopped or nipped straight in the bud if everybody just got that. Like, you have your dance space and I'll have mine. And I've
Yeah.
always said that with dark matters, people will kind of say, she's wrong, she's this, as soon as you stick your head above any kind of parapet, people are gonna come and get it chopped off. And you have your trolls and you have to kind of get a thick skin, don't you? But
Yeah.
again, it's like constantly there's this constant idea that we all have to be thinking the same thing is just another box. It's just like I say, it's a coffin. It's a confinement. It's a construct. It's just like a contract in law. Like I say, well, generally they're cons. Anything starting with the word con, they're telling you. And again, this idea, like you say, and I'm obviously into. That's how I kind of fell more, into all this stuff on my journey because of the Saturn worship of the legal system. But this idea that, yeah, time, Father Cronus is linked, time's linked to Saturn, isn't it? And time condenses matter or condenses energy to, a slow vibration, which gives us matter. And the positive side of Saturn, as much as people think, Saturn is all evil, and there's, even the planets are these 12 archetypes, or these wanderers, as they're called, like they have a duality to them too. So Saturn also gives us this material experience. He puts meat on the bones, as we say, as much as I do like the way that you put it in relation to that people kind of take the perversion of the negative elements of things, and they are turning it into Satanism and into all this kind of adrenochrome and all these horrible things and that we kind of that are going on. But if we're not kind of looking at it, in the game, I think that the way of the adept is the middle way, isn't it? There's positive
For
and there's
sure.
negative.
Yeah.
And the way of the adept is to kind of see both, see the yin and the yang, see all these things flowing, the black and the white, and to kind of float above it. And yeah, like it's like you say with Batman and Joker. Batman is perceived to be good and the Joker's perceived to be bad, but they don't kind of exist without each other. There's a funny video where I think it's in Lego Batman, but he's going, but Batman, I love you. I'd never kill you. Joker doesn't want Batman dead. Because then where's the fun in the game?
Yeah.
There's and people kind of forget that the game plays out. So there has to be, well, there doesn't have to be, but there is this duality reality in this place. It's not something to kind of be fearful of or scared of, but to kind of almost, yeah, that's what alchemy is, isn't it? Led to go to kind of to rise above it, to raise above it, I suppose, in
Yeah.
that sense. Um, but yeah, your decode as well, and I'm a student, I'm a baby at this, I'll absolutely hold my hand up. So the way that you linked the Christ to the flux capacitor of the DeLorean in Back to the Future, and that kind of idea again of time it's like it's so concurrent, and I use the word current probably on purpose, but and we'll put some images up of the flux capacitor if people don't know that. I'm assuming most people have watched Back to the Future, but it's actually in the shape of a Y, isn't it? And the way that Jesus is kind of on the cross in that
Droop
sense.
down. Yeah.
And obviously the flux capacitor is what makes time travel possible in Back to the Future. And the car, which is the DeLorean, is the vehicle that has to get up to a speed of 88, doesn't it, to be able to time travel into the future. And the atomic weight of yttrium, which is the Y, is 88, which
Yeah.
is then linked to the torus field and the four-leaf clover. And we haven't got time to kind of completely deep dive these things, but just to kind of give people a flavour. And it gets weirder and weirder because then when you add up those seven elements, you get 39 55, and 39 is Father Time in Chaldean, which then added together equals 94, and then 94 is the element plutonium, which the DeLorean then runs off to be able to time
Right.
travel, isn't it? And it just kind of like keeps swirling around and linking in, doesn't it? Can you tell
That's
us a
right.
bit more about that? Because obviously you'll explain it far greater
Yeah.
than I did.
Well, I'm,
Everyone's going, what's she on about? What's she talking about?
yeah, yeah. I mean, plutonium really kind of is a big eye opener when you start to study that in the periodic table, and then you correlate that to astronomy, astrology. Pluto being in my research, Pluto ties to Prometheus, and the riches of the underworld. In Greek mythology, you have Jupiter, Zeus as the father heaven. You have Poseidon running the Earth, which to me, Poseidon is your screenplay writer. And then you would have Pluto, the underworld, which has a contract with the sun. Earth is tied to Pluto. Because the dirt beneath your feet, that's the riches of the underworld. And there's a contract with, your bones. When you die, when things die, when the leaves fall from the tree, they land on the ground, they dissolve, they turn to dust, turn to dirt, and then the cycle starts back over again. And you now have what's called an ecosystem. And I feel like the Earth has a contract with the sun. And the sun gives the light, photosynthesis, et cetera, et cetera. You have the water cycle in there, which continually feeds, and replenishes over and over and over. But eventually Pluto gets you because no one lives forever. You're going to die. So that you can correlate that to plutonium, of course, plutonium being tied to Shiva, plutonium being tied to Lucifer, straight up. And if you really look at the whole fallen angels story, the word fallen angels is 45 in numerology. That Jesus that you talked about, forming the letter Y, hanging off the cross, the cross is a letter T, and you have the letter T and you have the letter Y in the form of the man that hangs off that letter T, and the letter T is the 20th letter and the letter Y is the 25th letter, and you take 20 and 25, that gives you 45, and now you have a match to the word fallen angels. You have a match to the word Pandora's box. Pandora's box also equals 45 in numerology. So to me, that's why, like, the whole Christ story, as beautiful as it is, it would be the most ironclad way to get people to reincarnate, to come back and play the game again, because you would have this amazing character that you would never question ever in a million years. Like, well, what's the alternative? Well, they throw in your face all this evil and the devil and hell and purgatory and fire and burning forever and torture, and the alternative is Jesus is your best friend. And if you go with him and you drink his blood and you eat his body, well, then you'll be saved from this reality. But my research doesn't say that. My research says that you will be put right back into the game again. And I think that whole story has been butchered, to be honest with you. So the plutonium has a lot to do with, yes, Lucifer, yes, being tied to, and having a contract with this reality. Jesus and Lucifer both being tied to light slowed down into physical matter, spirit into matter. And if you just take the 94 of plutonium, the protons, and you separate the 9 and the 4, the 9 is tied to the sin wave. The 9 is the great repeater number. On any number you put next to the number 9 and you add it up and reduce it down, it's going to repeat that number. So 9 is the great repeater number. And that is tied to the number 4 because that's 94. So 9 repeats the 4. The 4 is the cube, the box, the square, the cube. This would be 4, 94. 9 repeats the 4 over and over and over. It never ends, ever. This game never ends. It just changes characters. It changes agendas. It changes characteristics. It changes through the ages. You can get into the yugas and in the Vedas. We have the golden age to the dark age, and then it just repeats again. So, that's kind of what plutonium is, and it's really tied to the clearing of the board. That's why plutonium is tied to nuclear war, and the nuclear explosions, and Shiva, the destroyer.
Yeah. And Shiva's outside CERN, isn't it? There's the big model of Shiva outside CERN, which comes from Cernunnos, which is Pan, the horned god. I mean, like I say, my background really is the etymology and the symbology. Like Manly P. Hall says, when man learns to learn or read the language of symbols, then you start to see things as they truly are. It's like a huge thing, isn't it? It's a bit like, I always say, that film They Live. I don't know if you've seen it, Logan, where he puts the glasses on and whoa. Yeah. Oh, have you done it? Yeah, of course you have. Well, that brings me on actually to another point, which actually uh when I was kind of, I'd had a day of watching some of your videos, obviously kind of getting all this into my head. I was just like, whoa. And then I decided I always like to watch a film, though there's not that many left that I kind of enjoy these days, but just my brain kind of goes it's always kind of on a, because I deal with law and banking, kind of I wouldn't say taking the system on or battling the system, but let's just say shining a light onto it and exposing it for what it truly is. So my days are quite busy doing that. So anyway, so I decided to, put a film on, and I'm looking, kind of scrolling through, and I spend more time looking for one really. But then I thought, oh,
Yeah.
Donnie Darko. I thought I've not seen Donnie Darko for years, and then I thought, wow, actually, let's watch it, because I watched it probably like 20 years ago or something. I thought, I bet there's some stuff in that
Yeah. First
film
set of
now
eyes.
that it'll pop out like mad, knowing what I know now. So then I watched Donnie Darko, and I was like, after I'd watched your video on the Christ battery decoded, and obviously the Back to the Future reference and the 88 and time and the DeLorean and all this stuff, and I was just like, I was picking out so many stuff, so much stuff. And then the next morning, I was talking to my friend Shane, and and I was telling him all these things that I'd seen in Donnie Darko, because we talk a lot about this kind of thing. And then it hit me, and I was like, oh, there's no way Logan's not done a video on Donnie Darko at some point. So I typed it, and boom, there it was. So if you'll humor me, I made some notes of the things that I saw, and then I made some notes on the stuff that you saw, and I was just like, wow, because obviously you've got one thing that I did kind of pick out, because obviously your decode on the great architect of the universe, and there's a series of them, of course, and please go do watch them, because like I say, it blows your head. But there's a famous montage in there in Donnie Darko where they're in the school, and the Tears for Fears song's on, isn't it? And the kind of dun 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 dun, dun, and he's kind of moving through the school. And one of the lines that hit me was like, "This is my four-leaf clover." And I was just like, I just obviously watched your decode on the architect, and I was like, oh my God, because that's the Taurus field, that's infinity, that's the four-leaf clover, that's the 88, that's time travel. And for those people who haven't seen Donnie Darko, again, who now saying what is she on about? It's a film about time travel, isn't it? And kind of about death and portals and all kinds of different stuff. And then that fit in kind of neatly with the Taurus field, and like I say, this idea of these infinity loops. And then obviously it said funny how time flies. So it's all set about time. And then I noticed obviously the year the film is set in is 88, isn't it? And again, 88 is the speed the DeLorean has to get up to time travel.
Yeah.
And then it said in the song, I wanted to be with you alone and talk about the weather. And then I was thinking about the four pillars of the earth, and the tetragrammaton and the cube.
Yeah.
And it was one thing that I did spot as well. The two films that were being shown at the cinema were The Last Temptation of Christ and The Evil Dead. And I thought that kind of nicely kind of pointed to kind of duality reality for me, kind of like the dark and the light. It was, when he leaves the cinema to kind of go and burn that guy's house down. But you, Logan, pulled out nicely, which, is just, again, that just years and years of doing this. But 28 days is the countdown, isn't it? 28 days, 6 hours and 42 minutes and 12 seconds, which is the big rabbit, Frank, comes to tell him that, that's how long is left before the world ends. And of course, when you add that up, it was 88, wasn't it? Again. So that decode kind of like proper blew my head. But one thing
Yeah.
that I did, yeah, that you can you tell us, obviously it said about the rabbit, and the rabbit is always like, Alice in Wonderland. He runs around with a big clock as well, doesn't he? I'm late, I'm late, I'm late for a very important date.
Yeah.
But one thing that you did pick up was that 28 is nickel, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think you were saying that 28, the element nickel, is related to old Saint Nick, which is the
Yeah.
devil,
Devil's,
which
it's
is
called Devil's Copper. Yeah.
the devil's copper. That was it.
Yeah.
And copper is obviously the blue blood. And I think, did you say that they call the blue bloods or Yaldabaoth? Is it the great octopus? Is it
Yep.
because octopuses have blue blood?
It's connected to it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's connected to it.
And it
Yaldabaoth
kind
is
of,
29. So Yaldabaoth is 29 in Chaldean
yeah,
numerology, which is tied to copper.
yeah, that was it. And then I was thinking about, obviously, in this country, we have our policemen, or police officers as they are now, corporate entities, but they wear blue uniforms. And allegedly, the elites call them dogs. They call them, because obviously, they're easily trained and they do their bidding. But we call them, if as a nickname, we call them coppers. That's
Mm.
what they're called over here.
Interesting.
They're called coppers.
Coppers. Yeah.
And if you get arrested over here, the slang for it is you're nicked.
Nicked. Yep.
which
Yep.
links back
You
to
get Nick.
nickel. And
Yep.
I was just like, I just keep making all these, like we were saying, like it's
Well,
constantly telling you like this thing, this simulation, whatever it is.
yep.
And I
How
think
about the
again, like
kids?
you decode it, but
How about the kids show called Nickelodeon?
oh gosh, yeah, of course.
All right, Nickelodeon.
It's
So yeah, so it's Old Saint Nick. So you have nickel.
yeah,
So nickel has 28 protons, and it's got an isotope of 58, and the word puppet master is 58. And then you just go down the line. So the element that has 28 for its isotope is called silicon. Silicon has 14 protons. 14 is tied to the word time, God, Satan. 14. 14 is tied to silicon. Silicon is tied to the future. 14th card in the tarot, the temperance card. There's your god of time right there. You can see that see the chalices. It's take now the angel represents light, a photon, and the photon as it moves through space and time, it creates a wave, a ripple, and that's the caduceus, that's the snake, that's the two chalices that it's holding. So this represents silicon and the future moving toward, and you have the technology capital of the world in California called Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley, where they make the silicon chips. Told you we're taking the metal from the earth, and who put the metal there? Right? Well, it's done on purpose, and then silicon goes all the way down to nitrogen, because nitrogen has an atomic weight of 14, which matches silicon's protons, and the proton for nitrogen is the number 7, and 7 is the chakras. So you have 7 for the protons, 14 for the weight. That's 714. And according to Manly P. Hall, the numbers of Lucifer are 7, 4, and 1. And we breathe 79% of our atmosphere is nitrogen. 79% is tied to gold. So you have the whole character, Lucifer, the light bringer, you have tied to the fallen angel story, yes. And then you bring in theology. Jesus says, your fathers of the devil, diabolo, in Greek, where that originally came from. John 8:44, in the New Testament, right? Your father is the devil, and you will do the work of him. That's the ego. You know what the devil is? It's your freaking ego.
Yeah.
What do you desire? That's why when Lucifer came out on Netflix, right? That was his power. He worked for the police department. Because, of course, Scorpio, conspiracies, underworld, Pluto. You want to know the riches of the underworld? That's why all this intelligence, that's why you got Manly P. Hall. When I decoded Manly P. Hall, clearly showed the connection between, where do you think you got the secret teachings of all ages from? Lucifer. They think of Lucifer is tied right to him and his parents. His parents, the crazy, if you want to check out like Manly P. Hall, there's one slide in there which like mind-blowing and ties right to Lucifer and Manly P. Hall and his whole, like he didn't have a choice in the matter of predestination. Both his parents, his mother and father, chiropractor and dentist. That's the bones and teeth. Well, the element that represents the bones and teeth is calcium. Calcium has 20 protons, which matches the word desire. Because when you desire something on earth, you have to leave the spiritual realm, incarnate into a physical vessel, and become a bag of bones. This is where Manly P. Hall got all his information from, the little voice in his head, which is tied to Lucifer, which is tied to Jesus, whatever you want to call it. Mankind ain't control this reality. Not in the least bit. Everybody's being used. That's why finding out what you're being used for and what your power is the most liberating thing anybody can do. Beyond any of the conspiracies, beyond any of like, oh, this is how it works, beyond any of that, forget all that nonsense. Turn off the static on the mainstream. Shut that garbage off, because you can't be a star in that movie, that's for sure. You're only going to be an extra in that movie. Become a star in your movie. And how do you do that? Study your code, study your astrological map, study your tarot cards, study your numerology, your Enneagram personality types, human design, the whole gamma, and then figure out what you came here to be in this reality. Then go have fun. Stop with this nonsense of this church and the devil. And you are the devil, folks. You are the damn devil.
Yeah.
Andrew got at
Yeah.
the same time. Uh,
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with that. Like, I just did a video because obviously my site's called Dark Matters, and people are always like, "Why do you call it Dark Matters?" Like, like I'm some kind of evil, like high witch or something, and I'm doing some kind of strange, like sorcery. And but I call it a resourcing platform. Like back to that kind of the middle way, isn't it? And for me, Christ was always like an archetype, and obviously, we know that Christianity, to kind of embody that Christ consciousness, or to kind of raise the chrism oil, as we say, which is the land of milk and honey, is obviously, the pineal gland, which is represented by Joseph, and Mary is the pituitary gland. We know it's all kind of anatomical. Sorry, the cat's about. She keeps trying. The cat's trying to attempt to kind of jump onto the laptop. She's
that's
going off. It's like she knows, like I'm up to something. And Bethlehem and is obviously our heads, it's our minds, and skull. Obviously, Golgotha means the place of the skull. So we know that really this idea of Christ, or this Christ consciousness, is these higher states of mind. Like you say, we are both things. We are positive and negative. We are kind of creating this. And Jesus and Lucifer, and I said it in a video that I made called Why the Dark Matters, because everybody kept asking me why I'd called it Dark Matters. It's dark because we kind of want to, we can't deny that side of it, or that part of us. And I said that Jesus and Lucifer, they're both called the morning star in scripture. The two sides to the same coin. And as you decoded, Logan, they're both number 74, aren't they, in English ordinal as well? They both equate to the same thing. And I say, there's two sides in a way to kind of, if you, I suppose, if you think you can get out of here, I kind of have this theory that, obviously you can follow the right hand path, or you can follow the left hand path. It's more about like a gnosis, really, and a decoding of this place, rather than being good or bad. And like you say, know thyself. If you know who you are, and what it is that you're doing here, then and that's the big thing at Dark Matters. It's know thyself and remove the shackle of debt slavery. Understand the banking system, understand how you can free yourself from all those shackles, and those constructs. And then you can start to kind of, like you say, go and skip about and enjoy it and have fun. You've incarnated into matter for a reason. Who knows what that is? But I know you do personal readings as well, don't you, Logan? Like, you can come to you, and let's hope you do me a mates rates, because I might have to come and do that, because I kind of weirdly kind of do know why I'm here, and I know you do videos on your YouTube channel how to decode your name, how to kind of to kind of begin on that journey, which and I did it. Um, it was interesting, actually, because I wanted to share this with you, and this kind of blew my head as well. And this was going off. I know you use Chaldean mainly, don't you? And I think that's how simple it is when you use the periodic table and the Chaldean numerology. I know lots of other decoders kind of use lots of different ciphers, but usually I think you mainly use English ordinal and the Chaldean. But my real name is Jill. So when I got the Chaldean value of Jill, it was
right.
8, which is linked to the element oxygen, and the atomic element, or the atomic weight, sorry, of oxygen was 15, which is the element phosphorus, if I'm getting this right, which means bringer of light. Now, this is how it got a little bit weird, and I wanted to share this with people. Because then the first law group that I did, after, the lockdowns, I started to show people how the system truly works, and commercial process, and kind of lifting the veil off that system of how we've been lied to about it for so long. But my first law group was called Bring the Light. So I was like, whoa, it says Bringer of the Light. And that was the name of my first group. So then when I looked at the eighth card in the tarot, like following kind of your process,
Right.
etc., it was justice. And I was like, wow, because
Oh,
I've
you're talking
always
about
said
the
with the
Crowley
law,
deck. That's
yeah,
the Crowley deck.
yeah,
The
yes, yeah,
right the
yeah,
right weight is strength. Yeah. Crowley's got it
yeah,
flipped.
yeah.
Justice. Yeah.
Yeah, and Kali is the goddess of death and time. So in a way, I suppose I've always kind of known. But I think it is, isn't it? If people can begin to understand their path and know themselves, then they're certainly on the way. And your work certainly has helped me do that. Like I say, it's absolutely kind of blown my head off, really. Um, so what kind of, like you say, you're moving into kind of, how long have you been doing it, Logan? Just how many years? Because it just flows out of you, doesn't it? It's like anything, I suppose. Eat, sleep, repeat. But how many
Yeah.
years have you actually been doing it?
Yeah, about a decade as a decoder. Even longer if I go back before I got into decoding when I started doing this whole thing. But like
Yeah.
I'm addicted to it, you could say, and I spend an ungodly amount of time as a decoder. I mean, it would probably be on average on a day. I start decoding at 4 p.m. and I don't stop for 12 hours. I'm a night owl. I go to bed 3, 4 in the morning, sometimes 4:35. And, 10, 12 hours a day is pretty normal for me, even on the weekends. So, and I've been doing this for years and years. So I have a lot of, you could say I have a PhD in decoding, like I went and maybe, I don't like using the word master's degree, but that's kind of like the amount of time that I have in the decoding world. It would probably correlate to that. But I'm just a decoder, right? I'm just a fan of how this whole reality works. It's part of my code. I have the Trapped and Limited card in my spread and my cards of illumination and my tarot. So like, I feel like I was born to kind of do this. I'm doing my job. And when you look at my code astrologically, numerology, et cetera, you could start to see that, yeah, this is kind of what I incarnated for. The
Yeah.
main piece of it anyway.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I kind of really relate and resonate with that because, like I say, when I've done just a basic decode like that, and that's how we all have to begin, I guess, as beginners. But I was just like, I've always felt that I'm the same with the law. I don't know why, but I just kind of get it. And even if I try and move away from it, if you have the frustrating days, and I think, you know what, why do I do this? Why do I bother? I've had enough. But then I don't know. It's like it certainly like feels like a mission, something I'm fated to do. Like it comes to me, I get it. And I think, as I always say, if you're not kind of deep dive in the nature of existence and who you are, what is it? What are you doing? It's a real passion of mine, which is, why we do this. And as I always think, alphabets, counting systems, that they're all constructs and fictions, as we know. These are cultists. A friend of mine, he calls it the cult of hoops. Really, if we're constantly looking at these puzzles, then I suppose like they become these self-perpetuating kind of like Stockholm syndromes. We can kind of become slaves to them. But I think, like you said, that if you enjoy it and you find it fun, because I do, I love it. If you don't, stop. When the fun stops, stop type of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
But again, that we don't want to kind of fall into the scrying mirror that much, where we stop kind of going off and living life. And I think out there at the moment, there's people are so ready to fall into these third party narratives all the time, like all these savior templates, like someone's coming to save them, or like you said about the Christ, if all those people are going up, and worshipping Christianity, but thinking and doing it in a literal sense, that's a huge energy harvest, isn't it? If these archons are going to mine anything, they're going to lose that,
Oh
because
yeah.
all these Christians, and we don't want to offend anybody, but you don't have to agree with me. Christianity, and in my studies with the legal and the banking, an annuity, like I say, is an annuity, it's a tax. So, to be a follower of Christ is this alchemical, in this alchemical sense, in this transmutation of lead to gold. It isn't, a person that's, you're waiting to fly down from the sky to come and save you, else you've missed a trick, haven't you?
Yeah.
But again, energy goes where is it energy goes where attention flows, or
You can do it
whatever
either
it is.
way. Attention flows where energy goes where attention flows. You can flip it.
Yeah,
It's pretty universal. Yes,
I
but
can never get that right.
what's your in your astro, do you know your astrological chart by any chance? Like any positions, do you know? Like that probably like where's your
I
Cronus at? That dictates law. Are
I
you that
have
kind of
had my astrology chart done, but I don't think in any massive depth, just something that I
okay?
kind of did online. It is something I'm getting more and more into. Obviously, the more I kind of learn, it's a huge opener for me. I mean, I'm a Gemini with Libra ascendant, is it? And with a Capricorn moon. Past that, I'm kind of a bit slack, really.
Well, there's your
It's not too.
Capricorn moon. There's your your emotions tied to Capricorn, which is ruled by
Yeah.
Chronos. So
Ah,
there's that interest in law right there. Well, what's your month and day of birth?
I'm June 11th.
Okay, so so there's the law that birthday is tied to the card the 6 of diamonds, and that's
Yeah,
the giver. I believe that is the card of
yeah.
Gandhi as well, if I'm not mistaken, and Gandhi was an
Ah,
attorney. Yeah. Yeah.
How interesting. That is, I have to get a decode off you my whole life. But I do have that. I am a giver. I do
Yeah.
kind of, I give a lot, and because I have this kind of, it's not a savior complex. I just kind of, I want, it's up to people whether they see it or not. But I certainly will aid and assist, in that. And I want people to be free of debt.
That's your card
Oh
right
yeah,
there.
the Six of
That's your birth card.
Pentacles.
So it's, you're holding the scales and you're giving to people. And what are you giving to people? The way you perceive reality.
Yeah.
And remembering that, like, okay, you're saying I'm exposing, great, right? If see, you wouldn't have a job exposing what they're doing if they weren't doing what they're doing.
Yeah, yeah,
So
of
it's
course. Yeah,
essential
no.
that they do what they do so you
Yeah.
can bring out what you do. It's
Yeah,
so
definitely. I
beautiful. The
get that.
orchestration of it is so beautiful.
Yeah. No, I love that. And it goes back to the Batman and the Joker thing, doesn't it? Batman, I love you, man. Don't leave me. Oh, yeah, I don't want to kill you. Come here.
Yeah.
And he's like, he says, and then Batman turns around to Joker and goes, I don't do ships. Like relationships. I don't do ships. But they need each other. That's the yin and the yang, isn't it?
Yeah. The
Again.
word relationship has the word re in it. Religion,
Yeah,
relationship, redo, reincarnate, repeat. That word
yeah,
re.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 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 to represent, or this is why in legal terms you get citizenship. Citizen means slave, ship in maritime law. So, we know that it's the law of the merchants of the Phoenicians where we get phonetics and you get craftsmanship, citizenship, friendship. It's all the ships. And we're
Yeah.
constantly creating these spells and trapping ourselves into these bonds. And that's why we get spelling. It's cursive, it's a bond. And we're creating contracts all the time with this place. But again, part of these decodes and part of understanding etymology and astrotheology and how it relates to our physical, to our anatomy. And now, the alchemology, which is, absolutely yeah, it's and again if you stay stuck at something, then you'd never be seeking. Seek and ye shall find. And the more I seek, that's why I find your amazing channel, Logan. And thank you so much for taking the time out for joining me today, just to kind of
My,
chat it out. It's been awesome. it's it's,
yeah,
it's
my
a it's a
pleasure.
steep learning curve, that's for sure, but I'm on it. I find it absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, yeah, it's not for everybody.
No.
It's definitely a very niche way of looking
Yeah,
at reality. And it's not for everybody. So you got to
yeah.
have the taste for this kind of research.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. And I suppose it's like find what you love and let it kill you. But do you think, I mean, one last question before we go, but what's if you could summarize the nature of existence, the way you kind of look at it into a meme. People always want a meme.
Well,
If
again,
you can.
I think this place is a movie set. I think Earth is a movie set. I also have broken it down as this place is a video game. There's reasons, you go into the movie. If you want to check out a really truth bomb movie, I feel Tron Legacy, the remake of Tron 1982, Tron Legacy by Disney. Clearly there was a lot of nuggets in that movie that
Yeah,
provided some insight as to perhaps how this reality works, being stuck in this reality. But I feel mankind's being, my final answer at this point is that mankind, we are all being used. Every single one of us. I don't care how high of a level, because I mean, people say, well, what happens? I escaped it. Like, oh, I broke free from the script. And I'm like, cool. Let me look at your life a little. Let me decode your life for 24 hours. I'll show you that you haven't broken free from the script. You've just moved into a different script. That's all you've done. You're not writing your life in the current moment through the free will that you think you have. And that rubs a lot of people the wrong way. I'm not trying to be right in your world, but I'm trying to give you something to think about. And again, I can decode. I'm very confident I can decode any single one person and show you that you're playing out a predestined script, no matter which way you slice or dice it. I mean, you go all the way back to like Judas deceiving Jesus and Jesus calling that before it ever happened. So therefore, did Judas ever have a choice? No,
yeah,
didn't have a choice. Like you would think the Pope, because a lot of people think, oh, Pope Francis is so evil and he's the Antichrist and he's going to, okay, well, you would think that guy has a pretty powerful position. pretty powerful script. You would think he probably knows how this reality works. You would think that. With the Vatican Library, you can't get into some of the, these areas. Like, you would think that guy has some knowledge you don't have, right? Some knowledge you don't have. And if he has that knowledge and he's like, okay, oh my God, I'm playing the Antichrist, I better change my ways. Well, he ain't budging. He's going right along with his script. He's all in along with everybody else. You as a human being, I know you're already all in. You're all in with your truth, and your truth is the only truth that matters. And you don't need to defend it. Just go be it. Just go own it. Go live it, and let everybody else do their shit, man. You didn't come here to save anybody. I can promise you that. Your job is to wake yourself up, make the mark in your world through the reality and the lens of your code, and be the best little devil you can be.
Wow. And I think on that note, I don't think we can say anything more. Logan, it's been an absolute pleasure. And again, thank
Thank
you
you,
so
Carly.
much. I'll put all your links below. So if people
Thank
want to
you.
find you, link to your website if you fancy a reading off Logan as well, which I'm totally gonna do. It's gonna be awesome. So yeah, thanks again. And I've been Carly and thanks for watching.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been an honor and a pleasure. It's been fun.